Hi, my name is Eric Dewar. I'm Associate Professor of Biology at Suffolk University, and there I teach a class about evolution for students who don't study science called Humans and the Evolutionary Perspective. I'm here today with a couple of my honor students, and we're going to talk about some articles that we read in Scientific American and in EMBO. So yeah, why don't you guys introduce yourselves first?
I'll start. I'm Maddie Bearden, and I'm a psychology major at Suffolk. I'm currently a sophomore, and I'm from Maine.
Hi, I'm Shawn Montgomery. I'm a political science major. I'm currently a sophomore too, and I'm from Massachusetts.
All right. So yeah, we read stuff about like, are humans still evolving? And then also thinking about what it's going to be like with that final human diaspora when we leave Earth. So yeah, what do you guys want to talk about in these articles?
Well, I just thought that it was kind of interesting that in the article, Are Humans Still Evolving? That we haven't had a new, a new genetic makeup in 100,000 years. So I thought that was just kind of interesting to see how kind of this form that we're in right now is able to kind of be successful in our world today. And I think they talked a lot about technology and science overcoming some of the things that we would have to change genetically. So I think that that's a big deal about how this Earth we've kind of not conquered, so to speak, but our lifespans have gone up incredibly, or they've gone up a ton of years in the past 100 years or so. And I think that it's just kind of showing that we're getting to a point where we can really be successful on this planet, to the point that we're almost overpopulating right now, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I hear that. I mean, I think humans and like our commensals, like the animals and plants that like live around us or that we've domesticated, like when you look at, yeah, we're every place. And in fact, I think gray wolves have a similar kind of geographic range as humans do. But for wild animals, there aren't a lot of other wild animals that have the same kind of geographic range that humans do. And yeah, a lot of that's by dint of like the amount of, the intelligence, but also like the cooperation. I think so. I think it's the technology, but also the culture that's kind of allowed that. Yeah, and in putting it in terms of like everybody's had the same genes for the last 100,000 years. I mean, I sort of get where he's going with that, but I think he's saying is it's not like we have a bunch of, humans. The reason why humans, if you had somebody in, Michigan and you had somebody else in South Africa, the reason why humans are all, able to make families, regardless of where you're from, is because we all have the same complement of genes. What that's saying is it's not like, humans and chimpanzees are really similar genetically, but not similar enough that we can still interbreed. So the idea we all got like basically the same genes on board, but but that's been like been in place for 100,000 years. And I agree. I always love the thought exercise of what if you could transport somebody from 50,000 years ago and they could be your college roommate? Like
Yeah.
could they learn calculus? Would they be on the hockey team? I mean, like what is the difference between them and us? Isn't genetic betterment? It's like education and a plan.
Yeah.
Just kind of like off of that, it talked about a two-tiered defense against environmental stress. So like humans either do it by behavioral or a physiological adaptation. So if like the changing like their location or their annual daily activities or different ways like for food procurement, then we go to adaptive changes, and that can be like heart rate, respiration. So like we have these two main defenses against environmental stress.
Yeah, I mean, that's true for lots of kinds of things. Yeah, so the difference is either times are tough where you are, either you move or you deal with it, right? Moving means basically if you change your habitat, then you're going to have access to a different set of resources. Or the idea of like acclimatization, where like you don't evolve, but what you do is, yeah, your body gets bigger or your body gets smaller over your lifespan. Those sorts of like kind of little changes those things aren't inherited, but humans are pretty plastic in the kinds of responses they can have to their environment. We haven't really talked that much about acclimatization in our class, but yeah, that's a mode, actually something I'm really interested in. It's like this idea of a flexible phenotype. It's called phenotypic plasticity, where you can have genes for one thing, but it doesn't mean your body's going to be the same your whole lifespan. It doesn't mean your body's the same during hockey season or when you're in the off season, things will kind of, your body is going to distribute the energy differently depending on like what's happening.
To adapt, we have to have resources and energy. So like it's based off that availability. So I kind of thought about like what happens if we don't have those resources, then will evolution take place?
Well, evolution's kind of always taken place as long as there's unequal resources, and so, but usually I think it's fair to say we usually try to limit evolution to mean like change from one generation to another, rather, because like we don't evolve over our lifetimes. Like our bodies
Right,
change, we acclimatize, but we don't actually evolve over our lifetimes.
right.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too, kind of going off that looked at a graph in the beginning of this year about the population spike from, I guess it was around like
Like 35,000
1,000.
years ago.
Yeah, somewhere around there. And it's just, well, it seems like maybe once our planet gets so populated, there will be a need for to fight over resources. We can already see this kind of with water and whatnot. So maybe at that point, when we're kind of being forced better at surviving in a world like that, maybe then change could happen. But I still think that humans would have to change in order to survive on this planet. But I guess it also comes with the amount of time that it takes for change to happen.
Yeah. First of all, there's always been competition for resources. The three of us are in a rich part of the world. And so, but if you think of like the bottom billion, the bottom 2 billion of humans on Earth, there's certainly going to be competition for resources. I wouldn't say we're doing it for the betterment of their gene pool. So I
Yeah,
think but I take your point though, is that, if when the environment, if we're looking at really significant environmental change so that our ability to be able to get resources really goes down, that's when we're going to get selection toward a different set of genes, but it's hard to say, it's hard for me to guess kind of like what that's going to look like exactly.
yeah.
Speaking of what it's going to look like, you know, I love, I watch a lot of space movies, and one of the things that, but it wasn't until like recently where I remember, but I just kind of realized, have you ever seen The Martian or read the book The Martian?
Mm-mm.
Is that the one with Matt Damon?
Yeah, the
The
Matt
Martian?
Damon one. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've seen that.
It's a good one, mostly because it's like pretty hard science, where it's like there, basically you have to, because the guy when Andy Weir wrote it, he like interacted with a lot of scientists, make sure the math was right, make sure like if a person needs to be alive for X many days, like how much oxygen do you need, how many calories need to have come in, like all those things are kind of calculated, but like it doesn't like enter our heads like in our average every day. It's like, can I drink that, or can I breathe the air? Like those things
Yeah.
that don't even enter our headspace. So the other thing we read about was the article about like what kinds of futures humans would have, like on Mars or on some kind of space ark or something. What did you take of that? Of the kinds of changes that they were envisioning?
Well, I just thought that kind of they were talking about births on Mars or whatever, and they related it to natives that were in higher altitudes. They would come down to give birth
The
because
Andes.
yeah, in the Andes, they because it's risky to give birth at such a high altitude. So I thought that that was kind of interesting. That kind of how just like the basics of life would change, and even like the birthing process, which is already dangerous, but we've made it, at least in first world countries, a little bit safer, would now change. It would be more of a riskier process compared to back on Earth. So I just thought that was interesting how it would kind of set the civilization back a little bit from the advances that we've had on Earth, while they're still kind of in a new territory and advancing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean
Y-
we've advanced in a way. Sorry, Maddie, but
No, you're good.
the thing is, it's what we've done is we've lessened the selective intensity, right? We can have bigger
Yeah.
babies because we have emergency rooms. What were you gonna say, Maddie?
Just like even smaller changes that could occur. They talked about how like sound could propagate. Is that how you say it? Propagate differently. So like it would result in different accents or like dialects, which could then result in like a whole complete different language
Yeah.
than what we speak now. And then also like the lighter gravity could affect communication, like things in body language. So it's just like these little changes, like even though they seem like slight, they would result probably in a completely different language that we wouldn't be able to understand on Earth.
Yeah, actually, the language thing is related to the birth weight thing. In that, like the place, Leadville, Colorado, is the basically the highest incorporated town, city in the United States. And babies who are born in Leadville are significantly lower weight than babies who are born in Denver or babies who are born at sea level. So, so basically one of the things that happens when you have like lower, like what we call partial pressure of oxygen, lower amounts of oxygen in the gas that you breathe, babies end up getting smaller. So I'm thinking on Mars, if we're instead of a, what is it, 20-ish% oxygen on Earth, in Earth's atmosphere, if you're used to 15%, baby's gonna be a lot smaller. So maybe
Yeah.
we don't have to, climb down from the mountain in order to have the babies. We can just have them there because babies are going to be smaller anyway. And about the accents and stuff, yeah. Do you think I never thought about that like that before. Like, if the air is different, how does that change the way you speak? And so
Yeah.
I think cultures are going to change, like between, you know, the Martians and the Terrans. Like, what do you think would like? Do you think it would be? How long do you think it would take for it to be hard for us to communicate with one another?
Well, I was kind of thinking that too because I thought it was an interesting point that kind of the body language as well would change. And I think for humans on Earth, that obviously not all of us speak the same dialects, but if you dropped us into a random spot on the Earth that we weren't familiar with, we could understand at least body language and facial expressions. And I thought that that was kind of cool that maybe theirs would change to the point that we wouldn't be able to understand at least or communicate through their own body language or expression. So I just thought that was an interesting point.
Yeah,
Kind of cool.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think first of all, we're all going to be watching the same TV shows. Like, unless there's
Yeah.
there's going to be satellite communication between Earth and whatever colonies are around, or even if you're thinking of the multi-generational space arc or something, they're totally going to be able to watch the Super Bowl, but it's going to be on like a delay. So how I always wonder about that. Like, even if humans totally decamped and like went to a different solar system, they'd be leaving cameras around. I mean, the three of us are talking on March 27th, 2020. So we're all kind of in kind of lockdown from the coronavirus. But I'll still check webcams to see what Boston looks like now, just because I'm kind of curious. I think because like humans love a good ruin, and so trying to look at sort of see like what's there when I'm not there. I mean, one of the earliest web pages was like this. Basically, somebody set up a camera so they could check to see how much coffee there was in the coffee pot in the break room in Cambridge. And so, like, I'm certain that we're still going to be watching the same shows and the same movies. So, like, if that's the case, then how long is it going to take for language to change? We talked about like after what was that? How long ago was Beowulf? Like you can read ish Middle English, but we talked about how long when you have enough time in isolation, new languages evolve. So like, yeah, how long would it take if we can communicate with one another? How long would it take for languages really to change with one another? Or would like cool Martian slang be something on Earth that sounds like normal on Mars, but sounds goofy on Earth? I don't know. Yeah, Maddie, what do you
I
think?
think
Yeah.
I think definitely a long time. I mean, I don't like have a specific answer, but I do think eventually like communication and language on Mars will be so different from Earth that we won't be able to communicate.
Yeah.
I think that it would also depend on how accessible it would be to go back and forth between Earth and Mars because I feel like if you have relatives on Mars, like something like that, it would be
That's
easier.
true.
You would have more incentive for either one of them to go back and forth. So I feel like if there was some sort of connection between Earth and a colony that was on Mars, instead of just like watching the same TV shows, I feel like then the language would take longer, or maybe they would come together, and Martian slang would be cool on Earth, and vice versa. Earth slang would be cool on Mars. So yeah.
I don't
And
know.
it did say something like how long it would take for Martian people and Earth people to not be able to procreate, like
Yeah, that's
how long that would take to make them so like genetically different that they can't have babies. So maybe it would like take a way longer time and they would still communicate.
Well, this would be something, actually, that's an interesting question now. Let's say, because I think it's likely, like, because what causes, what causes like evolutionary change? It's like isolation of small populations, right? Where you don't bring in genes, you don't gene flow from other places. That's when you end up seeing these changes that sweep through a population. Um, but I don't think it's ever happened before that we have, because like we're talking about intelligent animals, where you have two species, like, so let's say after 50,000 years, humans and Martians have had so little genetic contact that we basically can't interbreed anymore. So now we got two species. But because we all watch the same TV shows, and there's got to be some kind of trade or some kind of diplomatic relations between the worlds, we still speak, at least we can still communicate with one another. Like there hasn't been a situation before that I can think of where you have what are called sister species that still are culturally linked, but but are genetically separated from one another.
Yeah.
You also brought up like that like in a small population and like a small group that like those changes can take place. And just one of the important things that like I took from the article, like they said that everyone that goes to Mars would have to be genetically healthy people, and they need a broad genetic diversity of the gene pool. But like one of the things that stood out was the talk of disease, especially because of what's going on right now, and how like that could completely wipe out the population that we put there if one thing spreads. So just like taking that into consideration, that we have to be really careful with like biology and culture. Like it's not just all technology. Like we have to consider all those biological things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say that I feel like every colony that's ever been settled has always had a tough start at first and always gets hit by a plague or some sort of thing because it's a new environment and it wipes through. So I feel like the people that were going to this new colony would have to realize that there'd obviously be some risks, and you can select for the most genetically healthy people, but if they die because of like there's going to be people that are going to die regardless. So
Right.
I just feel like I feel like it would be a lot of trial and error, especially because it's a different planet. You're not like when settlers came over from Europe to North and South America, they were still on the same planet. Obviously, there's different environment and stuff, but I just feel like if you're going to Mars, no matter how well you selected for it, I feel like a lot of people would probably die. And
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly the rigors of colonization, of exploration, right? So I totally buy it there. But, I think what they're making a bigger deal about with the genetics here is like what we call the founder effect. So you look at small, like locally interbreeding populations that end up having like these genetic defects kind of develop. So another thing that humans really haven't done, like when people colonized, the Americas, they didn't say, okay, we need a genetically diverse population so we can minimize our amount of disease. So I think that, so this would be a case where, we remember that most of the genetic diversity is found in Africa. You'd have to select your cohort of colonists would have to be selected from people that are going to bring in as diverse a set of genes as possible. So
yeah,
like the colonists are not going to look like a racially homogenous group, I would expect. It's going to look like a freaking Benetton ad where it's all different, like all different colors and kinds of people, because that's what's going to give you like the greatest amount of gene flow. Give you like the best possible start if you're going to have a small population for, to kind of limit the founder effect. Yeah, so it's all going to be, humans would have to get selected from all over in order to do that.
And to really experiment, like they're gonna have to start procreating off Earth. Like they talked about, like how it, like we have to start somewhere. So
yeah, or we keep stocking them with more. I'm sure that would happen for a while too. But anyway, that far future I can't worry about today, I guess. Is there anything else you guys want to finish up with before we tie things up here?
what do you think? Like, do you think like time-wise, like how close do you think we are to this?
Um,
Like just from
we're
someone that's like,
we're far off. I mean, you think of the engineering, because like one of the things
Mhm.
I mentioned The Martian before. That book and the movie are they're like, for me, they were an exercise of reminding ourselves of like all the stuff we take for granted, because our bodies and the bodies of every other thing that lives on Earth is totally sculpted for this particular environment that we find ourselves in. If we're going to try to explore, first of all, go to space, which is full of hazards that we are not adapted for, we're completely reliant on our technologies to be able to survive that. We go even Mars, the most Earth-like of the planets in our solar system. There's going to have to be a ton of like geoengineering that has to happen in order to make it habitable for us. So we're looking at, cultural. First of all, culturally, knowing what we pay taxes for, what people are willing to pay taxes for. There's no way that like there are a lot of people who are only paying taxes now for stuff that actually benefits people who we can't see.
yeah,
So like, there's no, people complain about space exploration now because it's like, well, we have problems here on Earth, and we do. We legit have problems we need to care for one another here, but no, we got to get our house in order first before this becomes a real thing. And so humans still have, and again, we say this in in March 2020. We say there's a lot of stuff we got to get our house in order first before we start going. It's like my mom used to say, "Oh, you want to go to McDonald's? You got McDonald's money?" Like that's the that's what I think that's where we are now.
yeah.
Do you think privatizing space travel would speed that process up? If you could get, because obviously, whenever you privatize anything that's profitable, the billionaires jump right in. And if you have all that influx of money, do you think that it would speed at least the process of like colonizing, or at least uh, I don't know, into finding somewhere where that's habitable for humans?
I don't listen. I'm no communist, okay, but like if you're going to put stuff for private companies where the goal is that somebody's making money, then there's still going to be that's always going to be ultimately what the goal is.
Yeah,
This is something that we're going to do collectively. If we're going to say, listen, we need to solicit a crew of colonists, of people who are going to represent like as much genetic diversity as possible. There won't be there are not going to be like a lot of white people. There's not going to be a
yeah,
lot of Americans necessarily. So it's like, if you want to, if we were going to really do this, it would require that they would have to be such altruism on the beginning to say that this is really for the common good and we're really not making money off this. And Bill Gates, in his way, he's one who's actually he's put his money where his mouth is. He made a lot of money doing making what he did, but then he's given it all away. And I heard somebody say that in 100 years there are going to be statues to Bill Gates in Africa, but no one's going to remember who Steve Jobs was because he didn't have the same kind of philanthropic kind of approach to it.
yeah.
So, and think of all the public libraries in the U.S. A lot of them called named for like Carnegie.
Carnegie Mellon, yeah.
These other these guys, people who made a ton of money and then gave a lot of it away. Like the good vestige of the Gilded Age from that period of time was people who gave the money away for things that they weren't going to benefit from. So can private companies do it better? I don't know. I think we just sort of assume that private companies are somehow more nimble or something. But I think it would require from the beginning the goal of this isn't for money, this isn't for self-aggrandization, it's for like this, because this is like the next thing that humans can do, and like someone's got to give it a push in the right direction. But I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an economist. I'm not somebody who's the best person to ask about this. But I still think it's but it has to start from the beginning of because all the other exploration we've done on Earth has been, all colonization we've done has been done to make money.
Yeah.
If that's the goal, like if we're gonna go to like have encampments on asteroids because we're gonna get the rare precious metals that might be there, that's still for profit. But if it's
I
gonna be,
know.
we're doing this for good reasons because we want to go into space because it's there. Those aren't problems that we've done a lot, I think, as people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's what I got. This was fun, guys. Um, Anyway, so thanks everybody for watching, and say goodbye now.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.